Hello and welcome to the Shift with Lilian Kilani. Thank you so much for tuning in today. On this episode of The Shift, we're going to be talking about the topic shame, guilt, and self-blame in sexual abuse victims. And I know that this is a very sensitive topic, but I do hope that we're able to talk about this with an open mind, bearing in mind the sensitivity of this topic. As you know, on the shift, the main goal is to bring mental health issues to the fore, and sexual abuse is one of the things that affects a person's mental health greatly. And so today I have a guest with me that's very passionate about talking about all things mental health, but today she really wants to talk about sexual abuse. And Joke, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about Joke. She's a very seasoned musician, plays the instrument, music director, a songwriter, arranger, all things music. But apart from that, there's something people do not know about you, Joke, is that you're a doctor and you've received and won numerous awards of recognition for your contribution, of course, in music. But you also have your PhD in geography.
Yes.
From Leicester University.
Leicester, yeah.
Leicester,
Yeah.
is that right? Leicester University. Okay, thank you. And a lot of music certifications and several academic awards. Now, I think one thing people want to know is why you're here. And I know you're here because you have a strong passion for music and for mental health.
Yes.
And social wellness, and you don't really mince words when it comes to speaking up against
No.
social ills, especially when it affects the vulnerable ones. So
Yes.
I think you're right on the right show, because on the shift we don't mince words either. We want to bring these things to the fore. We're tired of people hiding the truth, and your truth is your truth.
True.
I cannot take it away from
True.
you. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's get right into this subject of sexual abuse. Let's talk about your why. Why do you want to talk about it?
Right. For me, I've had the opportunity to mentor many people. Mm-hmm. I've also had the opportunity to be mentored. And in this entire journey, I have seen people who are victims, and I've seen people who are abusers. Mm-hmm. I've also seen people who live through life carrying along the trauma that's been brought on by some of these incidences,
Right.
whether in the religious establishment or in the secular place of work. But in the secular place of work, you have guidelines or things in place to help checkmate some of these excesses. But in the church or in the mosque sometimes, or in other religious settings, there's a tendency to sweep all that under the table because we feel that we all serve a God who is a God of grace. And in doing so, we leave people who are broken for life. You'd leave people who can't express how they feel. Some even go as far as taking their own lives because nobody would have them speak. So for me, I feel God has given me a voice and the opportunity to inspire many. So I might as well use that voice to speak about some of these vices in society today. Mm-hmm. And if I may chip in, I'm the first of 7 children. So I've grown to be a hawk in a way.
Yeah,
and my middle name means mother is shelter.
Right.
So all that rolled in one is the reason why I am passionate about the mental health of people and how vulnerable people are looked after in society.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to I think we're going to circle back to the issue of, people, mental health issues in, religious settings or cults or whatever groups people belong to. But I want us to start on, the general platform of sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. And I was going to go into statistics and get the stats on, sexual abuse and how many people. But the truth is, when I started doing that research, I dumped it because I was like, it's a waste of time. Yeah. Because it doesn't scratch the surface as to the people that are actually suffering from sexual abuse.
Yeah.
3/4 of it are not reported.
Yeah.
And so what you have as your statistics is about 1/4 of people.
It's skewed.
Right? And and it's really very skewed. And so I said, that's not a route we want to go to today, because we want to talk about honesty. And when you're talking about the truth about sexual abuse, I want us to delve into why do people feel shame in talking about the fact that coming out openly to say they've been abused?
Number one is the perception of the society they find themselves in, right? If you know you're going to be judged or no one would accept your story to be true, then it becomes harder. Or if the abuser is someone who is influential, or someone who has authority over you, like your pastor, your imam, your father, your uncle, your aunt, your boss, or someone who provides your livelihood. I've heard of cases where the abuser is actually the boss at a restaurant or something, and most of these people don't have anywhere to fall back on if they were to lose their jobs. So it becomes harder to really come out and say, blah, 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 abused me. Because you know there'll be other consequences. Beyond losing your direct job, you may not be able to get any job from anyone in the circle. So it becomes hard. But first and foremost, we don't have, how would I call it, establishments or there's a word I'm looking for, I can't get out right now.
Like an organized, like a structure.
Like a structure, exactly, thank you.
Yeah.
Like a structure in place to protect people who come out to speak their own truth.
And so, is that why you find some of them or some victims end up committing suicide?
Yes,
because when you,
I can't tell you my truth, and you're not even willing to listen to start with.
Yeah.
You don't want to believe me, and then like there's this notion that it's because you seduced him or you seduced her, you're evil. So I might as well keep it internally and end it up because life is even painful. I can't stand the sight of him, and he's everywhere I find myself. So it's better I go on into a different world where nobody knows me, and I really don't know what's to come, but at least I know it is over.
Right. Okay. So for the intent of this episode, I want to let our viewers know that we're not stereotyping, we're not talking about sexual abuse victims being only females.
Yes.
Because we do know that there are so many men that have been abused and are victims of abuse themselves, either by other men or by women.
Yes.
Believe it or not, women do engage in abuse as well. So we're not trying to stereotype anyone. We're trying to bring this conversation up and let everyone understand that we all know that sexual abuse is everywhere we look. And ignoring it does not make it right, because it's not going to go away, but it doesn't make it right. Now, I was listening to a victim yesterday tell her story, and she was saying, this is my truth. Now, whether you believe it or not, it's my truth. Now, why should a victim of sexual abuse feel guilty for telling their truth?
It's sad. It's just that we have decided that they don't qualify to speak. Their truths are not good enough for what we call the ideals. It's like saying the Pope raped somebody. It's like, how dare you, His Eminence? How dare you? Who are you? So if a young lady was to, for example, I'm not saying that's the situation, accuse the Pope, there are so many other priests that will shut it down before it even gets to anywhere where she can be taken seriously.
And is that because we've idolized these people in authority because we feel
have
they
so
are not human?
idolized them that we forget that they are primarily human to start with. And because they are human, they also have frailties. They all have shortcomings. We all look beautiful behind our makeup and our clothing, but nobody really knows the heart. That's why it is said that you don't stand surety for people, except if you have lived with them long enough to testify of what they're able to do in their closets. So it could be anybody. That's another thing I like to see. It isn't a label that people carry. I am an abuser. Anybody can be an abuser if you have a shortcoming in that area.
Right. So then should being a victim of sexual abuse, is that a label? That's the other thing that I wanted to bring to the fore, is that the fact that someone is a victim, you've been abused one way or another by somebody, does that make you is that what qualifies you? Is that what makes you who you are? And I'll bring it into perspective, because it hurts me when people, because you've been abused, you can't talk to your spouse because you're feeling like they're gonna label you, they will feel, you caused it one way or another.
Yeah.
If I am robbed on the road by an armed robber or by a thief,
Yes.
do you look at me the next time and say, Lilian how do you qualify me?
The useless girl who got robbed.
Does
No.
that qualify you?
No, but that's what we do to these abuse victims, First and foremost, it wasn't their fault. Some of them found themselves in the care of some of these men or women. And then something they should hold dearly and decide who to give to was taken forcefully from them.
Which is robbery.
It's robbery
yeah.
in every way. In fact, it's armed robbery.
Armed robbery.
So
You're
to
robbing
speak.
the person of their
Yes.
self-esteem, their dignity, their
Yes.
rights.
And then there's another notion that some of these abuse, especially rape, has to be violently done. No, rape isn't always violent.
No, yeah.
Another thing people say is that, well, he had an erection during the process, but it's been proven scientifically that a man can have an erection without really being sexually interested in the activity.
Right.
So
It doesn't mean
it doesn't mean that
it,
he
yeah.
wanted to. He's been robbed as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So if someone is robbed, he is seen as a victim. Why shouldn't somebody who is sexually assaulted be seen as a victim as well and treated as such? People who are robbed have PTSD and they get the help they need because society realizes that it's traumatic for someone to show up in front of you and take what is yours at gunpoint. But with victims, we believe, well, it was your fault. So don't talk about it. We don't even want to know how it happened. Just go and ask God for forgiveness and move on with your life like it never happened.
Wow. Okay. So I love the way, and I really see you really want to take it into, you want to talk to, you really, and I'll go where you want to go, because I know you want to go towards the religious part and all this sexual abuse and what's happening and why it's happening. And I had a guest not too long ago, and we talked about mental health in churches and how the church is addressing this. We know that sexual abuse is high on the list of the atrocities that are taking place in church.
Yes.
So let's go there. Because I know that's where you want to go. So let's go there.
Disclaimer, she asked me to go there. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about the role of leaders, religious leaders. And we're not talking about just churches here.
No,
We're
it's not
talking
just
about,
churches. It goes
mosques.
round.
We're talking about Buddhist gathering, temples,
different places.
places that are spiritual or religious.
Yes.
Why is the rate of sexual abuse so high in these places?
I think it's because people who hold positions are held in high esteem such that we equate them to God who can do no wrong. And because we then equate them with God who can do no wrong, we frown at anybody that dares to say he or she did something wrong.
Okay.
So if you take something to be your deity, to be the God you worship, you would jealously guard against anything that paints it as evil or as bad. I think that's one problem, a major problem. Look at the Jim Jones the Guyana tragedy. They all saw him as God who could do no wrong, and that was how he was able to give everyone poison. And they all went to heaven together on a ride.
Wow.
Because we really can't see that they are human. They are not God in any way. So primarily the reason why is because we equate these men to God or these women to God. And there's only one God anyway. God is God and every other human is human.
Okay.
Yep.
So then, speaking of God, I'm going to ask the question that pops up in my mind and pops up, in so many other people's mind is, why does God allow this? Does he allow it in the first place? And if he does, then
No, I don't think God allows it. And I'll say the reason why. I listened to a pastor last week speak about the popular rape allegation going on at the moment. And he said God wasn't happy with David because when David's son raped his daughter, David was silent. And because of that, a lot of other things went on in David's family because he refused to, profess judgment or at least justice in the case of that rape scenario or where it happened. So God, even in the Bible, God is not an unjust God. The Bible says, whatsoever you do to the least of these, that you do unto me. And I'll tell you that it's not about God, because if it was God, why is it that when lay people in the churches do these things, they get punished?
Wow. Yeah.
So why should the ordinary man in church who has no affluence of any kind get punished, while those who should provide leadership and exemplary leadership, not just leadership, don't get punished? I believe in leadership by example. If you're going to punish the ordinary boy for getting a woman pregnant, why shouldn't you get punished for taking the virginity of another one forcefully? I don't think it's God. God is not that wicked. It's just like humans have taken the name God and then turned it into something that's a tool for manipulation.
And to add to that is that God gives us choices. So
yes, that's true. He created us as free moral beings to make choices.
And so you choose to go down that path as the abuser. And that's why we want people to please, know if you're spiritual, know your God for yourself.
For yourself. Read the Bible, the Quran, whatever book it is. Read it for yourself. Don't let anybody else interpret. And I'd like to say at this point, you don't have to read the Greek or the Hebrew version. There are a lot of scriptures these days that are translated into today's English. Read it for yourself and understand, so that when somebody comes and twists things out of context, like judge not the anointed and do my prophet no harm and all that kind of thing, you can go back and say, when Jesus Christ died, he died for every one of us, and then he brought us to him at an equal level. We're all the same, technically, just that one person has the head. In your secular place of work, you all have rights, equal rights before the law. It's the same thing with us as Christians, Jews,
it's not the same.
Imams.
No, it's not. And I think that's part of the problem is that religion is a government in itself.
True.
So if you actually commit a crime and you run to church, it ends at the door. That's or a mosque or a religious setting.
Well, it ends at the door.
It does.
I know that here, where we live in Canada, the law will still come after you.
But that's why. But there's a limit to where the law can get to. That's one thing. I mean, as government officials, if you're watching this, you need to start going in talking about where do we draw the line when it comes to spiritual settings and religious settings? Because the truth is, people have taken this thing too far.
Too far.
We're supposed to be helping people, but at the end of the day, we're harming them. And as a result of that, people are finding help in other places.
Yes.
Okay? So we're going to
other places and other vices.
And other vices, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave it there let's leave the religious part of things.
Yeah.
Let's come back to, victims generally.
Yes.
And talking about why do people fall victims? That's people you hear, and I say that because if you've never been a victim, one question you ask yourself is, how did he walk into that? Or how did he fall for that? Or how did he not see that this person had ulterior motive?
Yeah.
So why?
Apart from the random occurrences on the streets, on the roads, most times abuse happens when you trust someone so much.
That's well, thank
you.
So
trust is something you've so looked at that person. No, this person is so good enough, he wouldn't do that. And then the person then uses the fact that you trust them to do whatever they need to do. So I think trust is the reason why this happens most of the time. Apart from those who have mental disorders, that makes them do that virtually every night, looking for a woman or a man somewhere to assault. But most times when abuse happens, it's because trust hasn't built in advance.
Yeah, and that trust is broken. And now and when that trust is broken, you find people end up not being able to trust ever again.
Yes.
So how does sexual abuse victims relate in relationships, in close relationships like marriage, like, intimate relationship? How does it affect them?
I think I've heard of cases of women who are stiff, that hate being touched by anybody, depending on the sex of who abused them.
Yeah.
You know, like you find women who can't stand to be hugged by any other woman, even though they are married and in a heterosexual relationship. Really can't stand. It's like, yuck, don't even do that. Or they hear a door close and something is triggered in their head. Others can't stand being married to like a heterosexual person. So you have people who go into homosexual relationships because that's their own safety net in a way. It's like every man is an abuser. Why do I want to lie with a man when I know that he really can't satisfy me in any way? I'd rather just go with someone who is of my sex, who would understand me better. But we don't always think of these other things I'm talking about because we think it's just abuse anyway. Others go on to become abusers as well. Yeah. I heard of a case of a boy who sexually abused and killed another boy he met on a virtual gaming environment. Now, that boy who abused the other boy was 18. The boy who was abused was 13. In fact, in this case, the boy was killed after the sexual abuse went on.
Wow.
It turns out that other 18-year-old had been abused in the past when he was in the care system in the UK. So he was abused. Nothing was done probably because, well, nobody should be blamed. And he went on to believe it's okay for me to do that to somebody else as well. That's also a side effect of being abused. Let me say, we've spoken about those who can't stand the touch of others. We've spoken about those who have PTSD, like certain sounds just trigger certain things in them. Some just become social recluses for the rest of their lives. They really don't want to talk to anybody. They are okay just by themselves. They live in houses where they don't even want anybody to come knock in. They just don't want to see humans. They are okay just grocery shopping, going to work, but nothing social anymore. Yeah. If you remember any other one, we can also add to the list.
Add to that. No, that's a good enough list. But the other thing I want us to add here is the fact that as a society, we need to be we need to have our eyes open.
Yeah.
Because we hear babies as young as 3-month-old being sexually abused. Now, what did this child do to deserve that?
So we wouldn't say that child was scantily dressed.
Them or he was dressing scantily, because when you hear people, they wonder, they say, oh, she caused it. You know, the fact that I'm naked, does that, as a woman, if I'm standing naked, does that give you the right to abuse me sexually? The answer is no.
There are communities where people still dress scantily till date,
right? Where
the women walk about without any bras or any undies. But that doesn't give the men in the community the right to go assaulting the women.
Right.
There are still laws in place.
So for a 3-month-old and a 6-month-old, a 1-year-old, these babies, what would you say is the motivation? The truth is that we have people that are mentally unwell.
Yes.
Right?
I think that's what I missed as well, the mental illness aspect
of it. And because someone is mentally ill, they'll do a lot of sick things. And so you as, a parent or a loved one, we all as a society or a friend, we need to all be vigilant.
Very vigilant.
And try to protect one another in the sense of listen out for each other. But then how can we help? So if I am a victim, how can I get help? What help is out there for me?
I know there are a few charities out there that deal with victims of rape. You also have some of that in hospitals where they offer services for people who need some sort of mental trauma recovery. So ideally, I would say the church, but I think we have failed woefully in that area. So we really need to talk about that in another session. So as much as possible, look for people who you can speak to. It may not be in your direct network, because sometimes people in your own direct social environment really can't come to terms with the fact that you have been sexually abused. So reach out. It could be an anonymous call. There are numbers as well online now that you can talk to somebody. Just call randomly and say, this has happened. And beyond all that, let me just say that if you were ever raped, if it ever happens to you, don't wait, because you also have the sexually transmitted diseases that also come as well. So some of these things where the women don't really want to be touched, it's because some of them have contacted certain things after the rape happened.
Yeah.
Some of them have had unwanted babies as well. So if you ever find yourself in that situation, make sure that you get help
checked out
immediately with a rape kit. Don't wait. We don't want a lasting symbol of that trauma that has happened to you. Reach out to somebody. It doesn't have to be your direct network. Reach out to lines online. Reach out to any other NGO or charity that is willing to help you out. If you need to bring a case as well, there are charities who are willing to stand for you as a person to get you the justice you desire. Forgiveness and justice are not two things that can't go together. You can forgive somebody and also get justice. By bringing out some of these issues, you also help the abuser get the mental help that they need.
Yeah,
so that somebody else in
else.
future isn't also a victim. Because I find we try to, in the bid to protect the abuser, we give them the power to keep doing this over and over and over again. If he's been hurt or abused in the past, let's get him the help he needs. But it will happen when somebody speaks up.
Right. So don't forget, on our website, theshyft.ca, we're going to post numbers that you can call. So please visit the website for that information. But don't forget to talk about it. You know, the fact that you're ignoring it, it's not going to go away. You need to talk about it. One thing I want to mention is does time heal things like sexual abuse? Because people wonder, and people say, why did it take you 20 years to speak up? Why did it take you 15 years to speak up? Trust me, I've heard from a lot of people, sexual abuse is not one of those things that time heals.
Yes.
So do not think that, if I don't talk about it and I ignore it, I'm going to give it time, I'm going to give it years, I'll forget it and it'll go back, go away.
And
it doesn't go away.
In the time that we're talking about, it's a lot of other things
would have been destroyed.
in your life that you really didn't want affected, get affected. So it could be 20 years, it could be 30 years. I also feel that as a society, we should let people talk.
Yeah.
Don't shut people down. Let them talk. They have a right to be heard. You don't have to believe their stories, but don't shut them down. Let them speak their truth. The healing they need may come from speaking about some of these things. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Dr. Joke, for
My
joining
pleasure,
me.
Lilian.
Do you have anything you want to add? It's a very heavy subject, and it's very broad.
A very heavy one.
On the shift, we can only scratch the surface half the time, but we do try to get to talk about it. That's what we want to do here.
Let me say that if you've been abused in the past and you find yourself having that urge to abuse others, get the help you need so we don't leave more broken people on earth. You know, we should all be in love with each other one way or the other and tolerate each other. But let's get the help. It doesn't matter. Don't worry. God will forgive you. But first, own up to what your life has been, and then seek for reconciliation with some of those people who have been your victims in the past. Get the help you need if you're an abuser. Don't worry. We will judge you, or we may not judge you, but get that help you need for the future of your own generation, and so that you don't end up like Jimmy Savile, whose name God swung over in his death. He was known as somebody who did charity and all that, and then in death suddenly, 1,001 victims come out, and then his memory is so rubbish at the moment. We don't want you having a bad memory because it will come out in future anyway. So get the help you need today, right?
And please know that we're not saying that because you're an abuser, it means you shouldn't be part of the society.
No.
We want you to get help so that you can live a full life thereafter.
Sure.
Now, if you're a victim of abuse, please remember that your truth is your truth.
Yes.
Whether they believe you or not, if you feel the urge to say it, if you have the strength to say it, please come out and speak your truth. Now, if you don't want to go to professionals, find somebody. It might be a total stranger. Talk to them, because we know that talk sometimes helps. Okay? If you don't want to say it, record it on a device and maybe send it to someone that will be able to help you. So until I see you again, again. This is our wrapping up on the shift. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for joining. It's the shift with Lilian Kelani. Please join us on Facebook, join the conversation, add your comment, add your questions, subscribe to our YouTube page, The Shift. On Instagram, it's The Shift Yeg. And until I see you again, continue to talk about mental health. Thank you.